Hi guys, today's video is going to be a little interesting. As you can see by the title, we're going to be talking about what's been going on in pop culture, especially with the show called 13 Reasons Why. So there has been a lot of talk about it, and before I get started with this video, I want you to understand that this is my opinion. This is not, a qualified opinion. I'm not a counselor, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm nothing like that. But I am someone who does live with depression, anxiety on a daily basis, who is seeing a psychiatrist, who is going to therapy, and who is also on medication. So I do have some sort of connection with not this show just because it's a show, because of what it's actually talking about and the message it's trying to get out there. This is an opinion. See this as an editorial kind of thing that I am doing, but this is something that needs to be talked about, and I feel like if we don't start talking about this, then it's just gonna be let go and forgotten, and this is something that is really important to me. And I have been also talking to other people about it as well, trying to get their input on this show and what it's starting to cause as a conversation and what's going on. This show is super important. It's not just a show. It's not just based on a book, and it's not just something fiction. It's the conversation that needs to be had between everybody and what a mental illness is and what it's like to live with one. There has been a lot of backlash with the show, especially, of course, from parents, because it's on a streaming website that is easily accessible by anybody, and a lot of parents don't want their children to see it because of the explicit content that it does provide. And of course, the show does announce that it does have explicit content. It is rated mature, and it is recommended that, children or people who aren't mentally stable to not watch the show. But we live in a world now where, again, things are easily accessible, and anybody can watch it, from a 5-year-old to who's easily accessible to any type of media, to even an adult. But you have to find it, and once you find it, if you don't know what the meaning behind it is, it can be a bit much. So the thing that I've seen from this, I have taken a few classes on psychology, and I've learned a lot myself from mental illness. The show is, well, first I just finished it, and it was a lot to handle, especially the last episode. And I'm not going to try to give any spoilers, but I am going to say that the last episode of season 2 was a bit intense, and it's very, very, very triggering for people who are going through any kind of struggle, not just a mental illness, but any kind of struggle, to see this. The one thing that I do hate that people are talking about is how it glorifies a mental illness, and how it glorifies, I know I don't want to say the word, but we're going to have to get past this, but it glorifies suicide, and it glorifies all these kinds of things, but that's not true. Those are reactions from people who aren't trying to listen to what the show is trying to provide. The thing is, people let their fears kind of get in their way of what reality is. We're in a completely different society now. It's not easy like it was maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, where you don't hear much about anything because we don't have access to the technology that we do now, to where we can actually talk instantaneously and talk about each other's stories in the blink of an eye, and we can hear any kind of story nowadays. We can go on the internet and read about anybody's story and hear about anybody's life. Back then, you only knew about the people that you knew in your life, and it was limited because technology was limited. But now we have what I think is beautiful of the internet and of technology, that we can learn so much from people. And nowadays, not only are millennials and me and adults, but children have an easily accessible way of finding anything on the internet, as long as figure out how to learn it, and you can find anything you want. And I'm not meaning it in a bad way, I mean in a good way. It's like a world that is at the palm of your hands, and you can find or learn about all the things that you would love to learn about. And that's why some people, like me, confide in the internet, because we find people who relate to us, who don't make us feel alone, who will actually listen to understand. And the thing that is really bothering me, that with the backlash from the show, is that people, yes, might be listening, but they're not listening to understand. They're listening to react, because they either want to not face reality that this is happening in an everyday life. Yeah, this is a fictional show, but these are real events that can or actually are happening at the moment. And not just to high schoolers, and not just to anybody in school, but anybody in general. It can happen in life. And it's not an easy thing to live with. Yes, the main character, Hannah Baker, she committed suicide because she was a teenager. And a lot of people are saying she was very overdramatic and things like that. But the thing that people need to understand with the mental illness is that it's not as simple as they might think it is. It's going to be a reiteration that people always say. It's not something that you can turn off. It's not, something that we can help, or something that, oh, you just need to get over it, or you can change your mind easily. It's not as simple as that. The brain is a complex organ, and that's something we need to understand. The thought of a person is completely different from another person. You can't help what a person thinks. That's the one thing you can't control. And people are trying to control what other people are thinking. And when you have a mental illness, feeling that control from somebody else, it's kind of suffocating, because we feel this way and we don't understand it as well. And by we, I mean, in my experience with depression, anxiety, I might be 100% stable right now, but I'm on medication, of course. But when I get into that episode, it's something that is unexplainable. And if I had to put it in words, it's like being in a room completely dark, and you're by yourself, and imagine that there's a door, but there's no doorknob that you can't open. You can't get out or you can't get in, with like a tiny window that people can look in but won't do anything to help you. They just see you there. And it's suffocating to be in that situation by yourself. And some people just don't understand what it actually feels like. There's so many ways you can describe depression, anxiety, any kind of mental illness, but the way you describe it to that person, it all depends. It not on the description of what you're feeling. It depends on that other person and on how they will interpret that, and if they're understanding to listen rather than understanding to react. And that's one thing we need to look at as a whole and get from this show, that we need to listen to understand what's going on with that person, because their whole world might be collapsing, but you might not see it. And when somebody's in a mental state that is very dark and very scary, validation of their feelings is the one thing that's super important, because they're feeling that way for a certain reason. It's not just because I want to feel this way, I want to feel sad, I want to feel hurt. It's life experiences. And with parents or with people who don't understand about experiences, your child or your loved one, your friend, has had a different life, even if it's, something that you thought you can look over or have been present for. If there's not that kind of level of trust where you can constantly talk to them every day about what's going on, then you're not going to know what's going on in their life. And they're going to experience something different, and they're going to perceive things differently. We don't perceive things as we did about 20 years ago because of all the information that's out there for us, and that it's easy accessible. Going back to how technology is, we see different lives, we perceive them, we've heard experiences, and then we face our own experiences, and it's not the same. So my point across about this video is that this show is creating a conversation, and it's something that we do have to face as a reality, that mental illness is a real thing, and that children teens, kids, people are going through this every day. And even though the show is focusing on high school years and adolescence, doesn't mean that their experiences, especially in this show, is invalid because of what they're doing. Every emotion is valid to a person. That is one thing I try to reiterate to my friends, to people I've experienced that are going through depression. Your feelings are valid. And now I'm speaking to, if you are watching this, if you are going through something hard and don't know what to do and just are at that low, that rock bottom, that what you're feeling is okay. Your feelings are valid. It's okay to feel like that. I might not know what you're going through, but I understand, and I want you to know that everything you're feeling is valid. I know you're sad. I know that it's hard. I know that you might just want to quit and you might want to stop and just, like the word, I hate to say the word, but you might just want to end it all and commit suicide. Your feelings are valid, okay? It's okay to feel like that. It's scary, yes, but it is okay to feel those feelings, and I want you to feel those feelings, but not act on them. There's a difference between feeling the feelings and letting you experience them mentally and physically, and there's the difference between acting on them. We don't want to act on those feelings, but I want you to know that they are valid for whatever reason that you are going through, whatever you are perceiving life, the world to be as every day, and has brought those feelings in. You're feeling that for a reason, and I'm going to reiterate this so much. Your feelings are valid. Don't feel like you're alone. It is hard. Life is hard. I struggle every day. I just had an episode not too long ago, and I know you're at rock bottom and you don't know what to do, and when you don't have a support system that you wish you could have to where they validate your feelings and not make you feel of the lesser, it's hard. It's like negative impact day in, day out, and you just don't know what to do and you just feel like you're getting smaller. But just like everybody says, I know it's going to be a cliche, it does get better, but you do need to realize that the only way it does is if you do speak to someone. It takes a lot from a person to speak to someone about your feelings, and it doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're of the lesser of anybody else. It means that you're strong. You're strong enough to let someone in, and it doesn't have to be a parent, and it doesn't have to be a therapist. It can be your best friend. Just someone that you trust, who you know will listen. Confide in them and let them know that you just need to talk and you need to let those feelings out. Again, it's a cliche, don't bottle up the feelings, but the more you let them sit there, the more explosive you are, and your cup is going to be so full that any type of little drop is just going to make you explode. And when you get into that situation, I know when I get into that situation, I can act very impulsively and bad things can happen. And it's not something that we want to happen, or I at least want you, whoever is watching this, to happen. So aside from that fact, what I want parents, people of loved ones who are going through a mental illness to know is that your kid, your loved one, is going through something, and don't invalidate their feelings. That is the worst thing you can do. Just listen to understand is the easiest way to put it. Listen to understand rather than listen to react. You're not gonna like what they say. I can tell you that for a fact, because nobody wants to hear those things from a loved one, because it hurts mentally and physically when you love someone. But they are a person who is feeling at an all-time low, and if you are feeling at an all-time low, you would want to express your emotions, but theirs is worse. It's dark. It's not something that we know people don't want to hear because it's scary, but it's a thing that needs to be talked about. That's the only way a level of trust will be made between you and your loved one, is if you listen to understand. If you don't, then that's going to be a negative reaction from you, and A person who is unstable mentally, especially for me, I can see the negative reaction. You may not be meaning it, but in that moment, it is a negative reaction, and we can sense, or I can sense feelings easily at that moment. And any negative feeling makes me feel worse about myself. And it's not about you that we're creating pushback against you. It's our thoughts and our brains that are telling us that we're small and we're worthless because of the negative reactions that we get. And the more negative reactions that we get from a person, the less we're going to be open about telling our feelings. This is the conversation that this show, 13 Reasons Why, is creating, and this is why it's super important as a show that I am glad that these writers, producers, actors, actresses, and consultants are creating in this time where it's not as easy as it was back then. There's so many external factors from school, from society, from friends, family, that create so much pressure on the new generations coming up that, I mean, just to tell you one thing, there is a medical diagnosis now that exists that is called burnout. That is when somebody is physically burned out from life. Again, the brain is a beautiful, complex organ, but with complexity comes with so much that we don't know and so much individualism and each one is different. We're all human, we're all people, we're trying to get through this life, and some of us have setbacks with our complex organ of our brain that doesn't allow us to see life as other people may see it. We see it completely different, and everybody's going to see life completely different. It's a lot to take in, but it's reality. These things are happening, and now for parents, for schools, for anybody who works around children, these things are going on with these kids. It's not as simple as it was back then. I mean, I was bullied, but not as intensely. Mine was always verbal bullying. But there are other schools out there that I know, and it's hard to believe because it's a show or we see it on through a screen or read it through a story. We don't see it physically with our own eyes, but it's happening, and we have to accept that that is reality. And the only way to fix it is if we talk about it. The way you talk about it is what is imperative. You have to listen to your child or your loved one to understand where they're coming from. Let them say what's on their mind, even if you don't want to hear it, or it might be the worst that you have ever heard. That is their life. They are their own person, and you have to understand that this is the way that they have been perceiving life, and all they want is their feelings to be validated and know that they'll be taken care of, but not to an extreme. You can't let your own experiences get in the way of what that other person is trying to tell you. Don't try to put them in a situation where you're telling them about your life, what you've gone through, because when a person is in that moment, that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear that their feelings are validated and that what they're going through is okay. It's natural. It's something that happens to everybody, but differently. It's gonna happen differently to everybody, but it does happen. And just because the thoughts are super dark and super scary, this is just the moment. We need to process these thoughts and process these emotions to be able to move on. And when the feelings aren't validated and these emotions aren't validated, well, there's no process of them, and then it just stays in their mind and will eat them away, and who knows what that will do. And as we can see in the show, Hannah Baker tried to reach out. Everyone who tried to listen reacted rather than listening to understand where she's coming from. And unfortunately, it ended in a bad way that she had to end her life, which is not the intention of what every person who is in that situation to do when you're in that mental state that is an act of impulsivity because you don't know what else to do. That is what your brain tells you to do, and you're a completely different person because you haven't been able to get that validation that you need, that what you're feeling is okay. To those who have loved ones, listen. Just listen to understand. Listen to their story, even if it's your kid, even if they might be 6, 7, 13. You might see them, they don't know what life is, but they're going through something. They're going to school, they're going about their daily life without you at some point or an amount of time. Even if it's just 8 hours, a lot can happen in 8 hours. Even if it's just an hour that they're away from you, that you don't get to see what their life is like for that moment, a lot can happen in an hour. And if they don't feel comfortable enough to tell you what's going on, then we need to reevaluate the situation on why they won't. Listening is the most imperative thing that you can do in a situation with someone who is going through a struggle, especially through a mental illness. Listen to understand, not listen to react. That is my main point about this video. And I'm going back to anybody who's struggling right now. This is between you and me. You may not know me. I don't know you. I don't know how many people will watch this. But I just want you to know that your feelings are valid. What you're feeling is okay. Whatever you're going through, sexual assault, rape, anything minor, bullying, anything that is causing you pain and hurt and just has gotten you into a dark place, all those feelings are okay to feel. You are valid to feel those feelings. There's nothing wrong with feeling what you're feeling, okay? It is fine for you to be like this because of what has happened to you. You're not being over dramatic. You're not causing a scene. You're not all of the above. You're not being all these things that are negative. You are a person. You're important. And just like everybody says, don't give up. You have to find someone who you can confide your feelings in. And I know it's easier said than done, but that's the only way it's going to get better. You need to tell somebody what you're feeling and make sure that they're going to listen to you. And if you can do that, even if it's just with one person, it doesn't have to be with a licensed therapist, a licensed psychiatrist, your parent. Just find a friend. A friend, even if it's online, even if it's a chat room who doesn't even know you. Let someone know what you're feeling, and make sure that someone is going to listen to understand you and help comfort you in that moment, or help comfort you through this situation that you're going through, because that is what you need. And I know that's what you want for sure, because those feelings, what you're feeling right now, are scary, but it's okay. And I'm going to tell you, it's okay what you're feeling. Just don't act on anything. It's hard to say this because I go through it every day, but life is beautiful. Life is important. Life is something that is very precious, and I'm still trying to get a hold of what life is and how to live it when all these external negative factors are coming at me. But you are you. You're brought here for a reason. You might not know that reason right now. I don't even know that reason, which is driving me insane. But give it time. Time might be precious for you, and you might feel like you don't have time, but just be patient. And with patience, tell someone. Just tell someone. Reach out to anybody. Even if it's just the hotline, even if it's somebody you don't know, just make sure that they'll listen to you. If somebody's willing to listen and understand you, talk to them. I hope I was able to teach or try to make people understand what this show and why it is so important that we have these conversations, why this show is imperative. And if all it's getting is backlash, then it needs to keep going. This show needs to keep going if all it gets is backlash. If people hate what they see, if they give it pushback or reject it, these are the negative effects that should not be given to somebody who is going through a struggle. Then this show needs to keep going, to keep giving this conversation, to keep telling people that they need to listen, to understand. And until we have that thought process for people who are going through struggles, then this show can end. But until then, if there is continual backlash, I wish to see the show to keep going. And it's going to be hard for it to keep going, for sure. Not only, of course, from producers and the production side of the show, but from the conversation that it needs to keep creating. It's not going to be easy to write, and it's not going to be easy to talk about, but it does need to keep going if the point is not getting across that we need to start listening to people who are struggling, to understand them. Once that, like I said, once that is achieved, then the show can end. And then that point has gone across, and that their goal of making the show has finally been achieved, that we have created this conversation and this sanctity where mental illness is not something to be ashamed of, and is something that is going to be finally understood as an illness. And I'm going to end with this note that I was told by one of my counselors, and it is, if your loved one has cancer, you wouldn't tell them just to get over it. You would expect that they go through treatment, and you would support them 100%. It's just like with a mental illness. You don't tell someone to get over it, just like you don't tell someone with cancer to get over it. An illness is an illness. It might not be as explainable as cancer is, where we have all this scientific information about it, but it's still an illness. And it is a very complex illness that needs to be dealt with high sensitivity. That is what I'm going to leave you with. It's hard to understand it. Again, the internet is a beautiful place. Research. Talk to somebody who has mental illness. Learn about it. Learn about your loved one. Listen to them. That is the main thing I'm just trying to get out here. Listen. Listen to understand. Life is hard. Life is not easy. I'm not going to say life shouldn't be fair. The world doesn't have to owe you anything, because that's what other people are going to say. But don't worry about that. Worry about yourself and making it through the next day. Take it day by day, week by week. If you're in school, I know you have deadlines, I know you have homework, I know you have all this to keep you on a calendar. And you might feel like, well, how am I going to take it day by day when next week I'm supposed to do this? Just try. It's the only way you can do it. Speak about it. Talk about it. Find something healthy to express it. That's all I have to say. I mean, I could talk about it forever. It's an interesting thing to talk about, but I like to say that this show is important. That's a note that I'm going to end on. And I hope that it keeps going, to keep having this conversation until people start to understand what it is to have a mental illness and what needs to be done to help people. Again, these are my opinions, but I live with it every day. I have been living with it for 4 years. I see a psychiatrist, I see a counselor. I am on so much meds, like 3 medications. So I feel as if I could be qualified to kind of talk about what kind of needs to be done from a general perspective of when someone is going through a struggle, because that's what I would want. And I know if that's what I would want in that moment of a struggle, that's what that other person wants. They want to be understood. That's it. It's not that hard to think about. They just want to be understood. So I hope you liked this video. Just like always, give it a thumbs up if you did. Give it a thumbs down if you didn't. If you do give it a thumbs down, I understand. It's not something easily understandable, and there's going to be people out there that don't understand mental illness and will refuse to understand. That's just the reality of it. And if someone can't understand what it is, that is their problem, not yours, and not mine. And that's why I'm posting this. Whatever you're doing, I hope the next few hours or the next 24 hours will be good for you, and that you will get through this. What you're feeling is valid. It's okay. Don't be scared. You can be scared for a little bit, but don't let it overwhelm you. Don't let it get to you, and try not to act on your thoughts and your feelings. I know easier said than done, but once you speak about it, it will get better. It does every time that I do, and I've been through it for the past 4 years. It's a struggle every day, and that's what I'm gonna say. It's gonna take a while, it takes time, and it's still a fact that I'm trying to wrap around my head, but if we have a community of people right here on the internet and people who support others, we'll get through it. Surround yourself with people who are going to support you rather than put you down. That's all I have to say, and again, have a good night, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you are. I just hope whatever you're going through, that we'll get over this bridge. You will get over this bridge. It's a hard time, but it's okay. Everything will be okay.